When one realizes that activates their state of alertness, what we commonly call, what are your stress factors? Money, heights, seeing my ex-partner, my father-in-law, my boss, traffic, enclosed spaces, open spaces, situations, Christmas. Each person has moments, circumstances, people, events from the past, present, or future that only compensate in activating their cortisol, and when one understands it, they are able to comprehend their inner world much better. When your inner world is understood, you can confront it, accept it, understand it, and overcome it. When you apply reason to the emotional world, what Goleman discovered and called emotional intelligence, you become a superior person, because in the face of everything that happens, in the face of everything that comes to you, in the face of the emotional world, you feel much better. If you're not overwhelmed by an emotional and sentimental world that you can't manage and you drown in the midst of it all, stress factors in the last 2,000 or 5,000 years have changed. Before it was the tiger, then it was the Romans, it was wars, it was the lack of food. It has been changing. Now it could be traffic. We are modifying the brain over the years. If a Bengal tiger appears today, logically, we would die. And perhaps our cortisol would be much more activated than a person from prehistory who was more adapted to it. But everyone adapts to different stress factors to face them in the best possible way. What does that cutoff do? It activates all my mechanisms so that I can fight, and that's why the palpitations start, to pump blood to my tissues and be able to run away from the Bengal tiger, the sweating. Because my whole body is working with a lot of ATP energy, and I sweat, tachypnea, the need to take in more air because I need more oxygen in my cells. The prefrontal cortex, which helps me think, works worse because fear always makes me think worse, the issue of the prefrontal cortex. And suddenly, reason is worse. Get off the stage, it doesn't make sense to be here, you're not worth enough. But what are you doing here in New York? You should be at home rehearsing. And suddenly, all the ghosts come in because the one who manages fear shuts down. It's a balance, happiness. In my opinion, it's the capacity one has to enjoy the good things one has every day and the capacity one has to manage the bad things. It's that capacity, and when something good happens to you, you enjoy it. People who receive very good things and don't have the capacity to enjoy them, that's a problem. And people who receive bad things and have the capacity to manage the bad things that happen to them. When you achieve that balance between the good and the bad, you feel fulfilled. And you say, between what I wanted to achieve in my life, my expectations, and little by little, I'm achieving with reasonable expectations. There's a good balance. And I feel inner peace. And that's what we call happiness. Happy day. Sometimes we sell happiness as something you can achieve with the click of a button. That's instant gratification. Instant gratification is dopamine. The click, the like, the online purchase, the food that arrives quickly. All these instant gratifications, but if you don't know how to manage them, you get stuck in that loop of instant gratification. Dopamine, 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 and everything that manages so much dopamine ultimately creates a vital void, and you can end up with depressive states. Well, I started studying luck, meaning why do some people always have good things happen to them? You hear their life and you say, wow, it's incredible, and you admire their biography. And other people, as you listen to them, observe their biographies, you say, what bad luck they've had. All the negative things that have happened to them throughout their lives. And I started researching luck. Is there a scientific issue? It's an emotional issue, it's a chance issue, it's a spiritual issue. As a psychiatrist, I look a lot for the scientific basis of it. I have psychology, humanism on one side, and I integrate it with neuroscience. So I began to realize something that we all know, but sometimes struggle to acknowledge. There are people who are constantly in a frenetic activity that they can't stop doing or planning. This brings a problem because then our brain is unable to relax. Nowadays, we know that the problem is not so much in doing many things, but in not being able to slow down and enjoy the silence, to be able to enjoy the serenity of a moment of boredom. Why? Because it's from boredom that wonder and curiosity are born, and the desire to learn. No genius has discovered anything great in a frantic moment of activity, in a moment of stress. All the greats in history made discoveries in a moment of peace and serenity. They were able to disconnect from all the frenetic activity externally and connect with their inner selves to grow. Eastern society is much more focused on the interior, while Western society is focused on the exterior, on image, on activity. And when it's time to slow down and delve into the inner world, there is resistance. The second key point is that many illnesses, according to Harvard, from 50 to 70% of illnesses, have to do with unresolved emotional issues. And this is the key nowadays in the 21st century. It's the society of inflammation. People walk around inflamed, and one of the reasons has to do with the way of life we lead. That constant alert system we have activated. My hair starts falling out. My skin becomes irritated. I have intestinal problems. Why? Because when I'm in alert mode, my digestive system is surrounded by a large neuronal network, and I notify it that I'm at war, that I'm on alert. So whatever I eat doesn't digest well because it's as if I'm being attacked on the street, and my appetite automatically disappears. I live constantly with that sensation. It starts inflaming my digestive system, it starts producing wounds in the intestinal wall, it changes the permeability, and I develop colitis, ulcerative colitis. The small wounds allow some foods to enter the bloodstream that shouldn't be there, and nowadays we know they are at the root of many neurodegenerative diseases. One thing I've always sought is to simplify the complex, because the mind is so complex that in the end we distance ourselves from mental issues because they scare us. Chronopathy, the disease of time, the constant need to do things, the need to control everything. It's a society that measures everything, calculates everything, the impact I'll have in a place, what I'm going to do, where I'm going to vacation, my life insurances. Control is my need to know what will happen in the future and anticipate it. And therefore, I always put myself in one of the scenarios, and that leads me to illness. When one loses the sense of life, when one doesn't find a meaning to their life, they substitute sense for sensations. It doesn't have to be negative, but it often is. When they substitute the true sense of being human, because if I make myself and only serve those sensations to fill me up, such as perishable things that are based on dopamine, which is the pleasure hormone, what they do is generate a great void, and that void leads me to a feeling of inner emptiness that often leads to self-destructive behaviors. And the problem is that we have become emotional drug addicts. We are addicted to vibrant experiences, addicted to emotions, we are driven by emotions. And when we don't have that sense that the Japanese call ikigai, the sense of life, we are profoundly unhappy. Japanese people are individuals who live many years. Americans have investigated why they are the longest living beings in the world every year. They have gone to Japan to investigate what happens, and in Japan, there is an island called Okinawa, where every year the oldest person dies. They respond to you with ikigai in Japanese, which means purpose of life or sense of life. When one has a sense of life, they know why they get up every morning. They know the overall purpose of their existence. Their brain lives longer and better because it has been seen that the immune system improves, neuronal connections improve, and overall, it may act as a protector against aging and mental illnesses. To find your purpose, you have to be able to slow down. You have to be able to momentarily abstract yourself from the heap of hyperstimulation and overstimulation to which we are subjected and delve into yourself. Analyze your life, your way of being. What catches your attention? But ask yourself the big questions of life. Who am I? Where am I going? Why am I heading where I'm heading? Is there life after death? What spiritual dimension can my life reach? These are questions that require studying, asking, slowing down, and often that's difficult because silence generates a certain vertigo, and suddenly, in those questions, there are no answers, and you feel a certain emptiness, and you rush to instant gratification that has filled that moment of emptiness. When you don't know who you are, you face a world full of challenges, of good things, of bad things, and you suffer excessively. When I can overcome myself, I'm at the moment when good things can start happening. When I surpass myself and I understand myself, I have to understand. If I am this way, what are my stress factors? Let me give you an example that I think is always much simpler. Let's imagine a woman who is shy, who overthinks things and is very sensitive and suffers a lot with everything. This sensitive woman under stress experiences a series of things. The sensitive woman under stress becomes very vulnerable because she suddenly cries, has ups and downs. The person who overthinks things when stressed enters what we call in Spain loop thoughts, because she did this, because she made this decision. She shouldn't have started working at this company, she shouldn't have done this or that, and she suffers a lot from these loop thoughts. The shy person when stressed gets blocked. She's in a place and doesn't speak at work and performs worse. So if you're a woman who knows how you are and knows that under your stress factors you become this way, and when you're blocked, you may have a panic attack. And as you're very sensitive, you have depressive states. You go to the psychiatrist, you take some medication for panic attacks and for the depressive state, but what you have to work on is your way of being and your stress factors. Let's say this woman tells me, Maria, in my stress factors, seeing my husband is one because when I see him, I go into alert mode. Another stress factor is looking at my bank account and seeing that I don't have enough money to make ends meet. And another of my stress factors is going to social events where there are many people because it overwhelms me. If this person works on her stress factors, her way of being, the day she has a panic attack, she'll say, it's because the other day I saw my ex-husband, I hadn't slept well, and now I understand it. When you understand yourself, you feel relieved so that good things happen to you, to know yourself, to have a life plan, a sense of life, and activate your ascending reticular activating system, that area of the brain that when there is something I desire strongly, it does everything possible to show it to me. It's not magic, it's science. Emotional intelligence is putting intelligence into emotion. It means empathizing, putting yourself in the other's place, trying to manage your emotions in the best possible way. That is, if suddenly a guy insults me on the street, I should understand. And slow down. Something is wrong with this guy. It's not against me. Instead of automatically by impulse, that is, giving a point to the head before leaving all my emotional world to impulsivity. And then, this is key. Treating intelligence as the ability to pay attention, to filter the important from the fundamental, to know how to manage life, social intelligence, practical intelligence, theoretical intelligence. Each person has to find their oxytocin point. I achieve that every day by slowing down, immersing myself in my inner world, meditating. I'm someone who meditates, prays, thinks. That is to say, stepping out of the hustle and bustle momentarily and suddenly connecting with things, with people, with memories, with things that make you grow from within. But it's an inner adventure where one gradually discovers what they have inside to bring out the best in themselves.